Welcome to the Impactus podcast, episode number 16, where we equip you as a man for a life of purpose and godly impact. My guest today is none other than Manafest, but he's growing up now, and so he is going by Chris Greenwood for this interview. Chris, good to see you, man. How you doing?
Yeah, good to see you virtually, man. It's been a while.
It has been a while. And Chris, we're going to talk today about a brand new book you've written about money. So we're not going to talk about your music, but we are going to kind of talk a little bit about your story in music and finances and how things you've learned along the way. You wrote a brand new book called From Red to Black, and it talks about this whole idea of how do you master money instead of letting money master you. But before we dive into all of that, just give our listeners a glimpse of your own story and how this has really been a personal journey for you.
Yeah, it really has. Some people know my story that I lost my dad to suicide when I was 5 years old. So I didn't have a father figure just as being a father, but then also no one to teach me finances and stuff. And so, we struggled for a while, and I watched my mom try to really figure out finances, but it was always, we weren't like, poverty necessarily, but I always felt like we never had enough. It was always, money was always, an issue, and just trying to get ahead, and always felt like we never really had enough. And for whatever reason, I just didn't want to be broke growing up. It was a man in our church, a businessman, that actually sponsored me to go to a Bible camp. And that's where I heard the gospel of Jesus. And so sometimes when people have this negative connotation about money, especially in the church, I'm like, dude, it was a businessman that was wealthy that sponsored me so I could hear the message of Jesus that changed my life at this camp. And also met my wife there as well too. And so I was inspired by that. I don't even think I really knew this man. He's much older, but it encouraged me to kind of want to seek out godly men, businessmen, and seek out that knowledge and whatnot, so that one day I could also give and bless and encourage and stuff like that, because I saw how it had impacted my life.
That's amazing. I remember a story of a friend of mine who's a really successful businessman, and he was sitting amongst a bunch of other business leaders one day, and of course they're doing what business leaders do. So what do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? Right? It's the guy thing. We all compare jobs. And it got around to his turn at the table, and his answer was, I'm a professional philanthropist. And everybody looked at him and like, what are you talking about? And he said, God's given me the gift to make money so that I can give it away. That's and just an amazing story. I always remember learning a lot from him about this whole idea of money and God's plan for money. One of the things you talk about in the book is some limiting beliefs that people have about money. And I think you've started to allude to that already by talking about Christians sometimes go, why are we talking about people who are rich? They don't need to be talked about. But what are some limiting beliefs that you think people tend to have about money?
Yeah, well, one of the common things I used to always hear is, well, I don't need much, just enough for my needs, And that sounds real pious and it sounds really humble, but when you dive into it a little bit more, it's actually really selfish, because you're only thinking about yourself and your own needs, and you're not thinking about, other people. And, one of the things that I always wanted to do was to bless my mom, and to bless other people and give to my church. Well, when you start having a bigger vision for not just yourself, other people, it forces you to like, well, just myself, that's just the bottom line. I need to think a little bit bigger, but some people kind of just don't see past just their own needs, don't see themselves as bigger or wanting to earn more so that they can impact people. And there's just kind of this negative thing. And when we hear it in the church a lot, is that the love of money is the root of all evil. But normally they just say money is the root of all evil, but it's the love of money. And just like your friend said there, he's like, I'm a professional philanthropist. And if you're ever worried about money getting you, well, just keep giving it away. Just keep blessing other people. And it really is awesome when you give something to someone and see them opening it and the impact it has. And I really think as fathers, mothers, you can, when you give something to your kids and you see the impact and the joy it brings you, I really believe that's how God sees us. He wants to bless us so we can be a blessing, And that's really, I had a lot of, limiting beliefs, and I still do, because of, they always demonize the businessman. They always demonize it in public and don't want you to go get more. But it's just like, I've been broke. I've been on the road, sleeping on the side of the road. I drove from Wyoming all the way to California on tour, and I got to California finally, and I couldn't afford any of the hotels that were available. And it was heartbreaking. It was like 1, 2 in the morning. And because I didn't have enough, I ended up sleeping in my van in some strange parking lot with a McDonald's, waking up every few seconds and then brushing my teeth in the morning, and then going to do the show and trying to be, this thing. And so the idea that, like, money doesn't solve all problems, obviously, but it does allow you to help people. Yeah. And in my situation there, and I know there's a lot of people in way worse situations, like sometimes it's the difference between eating or not.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that there is this reality where people who are living in a sense of poverty kind of feel like sometimes I can never get out of this, and this is just my lot in life. Then you've got a whole other kind of middle class culture of trying to live like we're rich, or trying to kind of keep up with the people around us. And so we end up taking on all kinds of debt. And, if you look at any statistics right now, you would see that the average in Canada, where you and I are both from, there's huge amounts of debt levels in Canadian households. Debt seems to really have become normalized in the culture that we're living in right now. And when I talk to people I know about debt, there seems to be kind of this shrugging of the shoulders, like debt's just a reality and there's nothing I can do about it. But you talk a lot about debt in the book as well. And I'm just curious, why do you think someone should care so much about getting out of debt when it just seems like it's the only way people can get ahead these days?
Yeah, well, it's a two-edged sword, right? And the Bible talks about, when you're in debt, you're a slave to the lender, right? Because you got to pay that bill, that note, or else they could take away your possessions. Whether you did a layaway plan and you didn't pay everything off, so you don't get whatever it is you bought, or your house, your mortgage. And anybody that's had a mortgage or whatnot knows that if you get behind in that, they can take your house, right? And that's, unfortunately, I've seen that happen to people. I've literally witnessed them having to leave their house, and it's really sad. And that's the danger of debt, owing people. And the Bible also talks about owe no man anything except to love him. Now, as a businessman, I do understand the idea of investing in real estate as a rental property, and you can make income and use it as leverage and make money. But again, you always have to take caution to the risk. If the renter doesn't pay it, especially during COVID or something like that, and people lose their jobs, so they never talk about the real risk. But as far as just the regular person who's got, a lot of debt and stuff like that, I think, unfortunately, it's just this mentality, this age we live in, is we're not patient for things. We don't learn to save. Like, if we go back a couple generations of our parents, they didn't buy anything until they paid cash. And that whole idea of paying cash, like, it's like we don't think about that anymore. It's like, oh, well, I'll just put it on credit, and oh yeah, in 2 weeks I'm going to get paid. And then I'll pay it off, And it's like, we need these things now. And I see it happen with certain people where it's just like, they don't want to get out of debt. They just want to keep borrowing, but they don't realize how much interest they're paying and how it's really keeping them trapped. But if they just, hunker down for a little bit, cut their expenses, or earn more income, which we can talk about later, and just kind of just go nuts at this thing for a little bit, then you have way more money to do stuff, and I've been there as a kid growing up, like, especially when I quit my job and went on tour, we were just swiping that card. And then all of a sudden you wake up one day and you're under this mountain. But me and my wife had to make a decision, say, okay, we are going to change things, and started actually looking, that's how much we have coming in, and that's our expenses. What can we cut? And we just kind of went like ninjas after this thing. And you know what? We paid off things quicker than we possibly could. a friend of my wife's one time said to her, you'll always be in debt, Melon. You'll always be in debt. And, I'll never forget when we walked across the street because we were at one bank, but her car loan was with another bank. And we walked and we paid that car loan off. And it was just like, wow, like we can actually own the car outright, And, again, that's the limiting beliefs shattered. And I'll just say for all the men, like when you get on the same page with your wife and get on a goal, like a 3/4 strand is not easily broken. It's unstoppable. And the devil don't like it when you get on the same page with your spouse, with your money, because he knows that you're going to do some good things together.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's great advice. I think one of the traps that I've seen myself and other guys fall into is, we buy something on credit and then we get to a point where we start comparing what we have to what other people have. And we go, I just got that paid off. So I'm going to, on what I want that next thing. So I'm going to keep buying it on credit. And you're in this perpetual moving up in the world to the next level of more and more debt and more credit. And, I have a pastor who, a friend of mine who pastors a church in a poor area of a city. And he's invited rich people to come and be part of his church. But he's said to them, look, if you're going to be part of our church, we want you to be invested in our community. So here's my challenge to you. Figure out what you actually need to live on. And then everything else, give it away. Like only live on what you have to have to live on, and let the rest of it be something. And when you do that, it's amazing how you get out of the trap of trying to keep moving up to the next thing and the next thing, because you're giving it away before you even have a chance to keep falling into the trap.
That's right, man. That's right. Like, you just say, hey, I'm only going to live on this and not that. And, during COVID and whatnot, like we haven't been able to go to shopping malls and stuff. I know obviously you can buy online and stuff, and a lot of people can get in trouble with that. But like for me, like, I like clothes sometimes and a nice sweater or new shirt. And it's been interesting how I haven't bought anything in like feels like forever. And it's like, wow, I can actually just keep wearing the clothes that I like and my favorite ones. And, sometimes you have this wardrobe, but you only wear 20% of it, and the other stuff just sits there. And it's like, why not just give that stuff away and just, like another shirt's not going to make me happy. And, we could get into the idea of like the difference between rich people and poor people, unfortunately, is, the rich invest in assets, things that, continue to make the money, and the poor invest in things that don't make the money. Like as soon as you buy a shirt or clothes, it loses its value. Like try and resell it. We bought something, it was actually for a property. It was a bed, a Murphy bed, for a tenant. And because we needed to set up the place so that it would rent out. And then we ended up just deciding to sell the property. But I bought the Murphy bed for $2,400. And guess what I got for it when I tried to sell it? I did not get $2,400. I got $1,600.
Right.
And I'm glad I at least got that. Yeah. But it's the idea, like, you go and buy something, like you got to understand, like, do you really need that? Because if you try and resell it, can you get the same amount? Right. You know what I mean? And it's like we get caught up buying all these things, and like I said to people, I was like, dude, like, make sure you actually need that. Like, or you're like, I don't even know what the percentage is. I'm not like a super math guy, but that's $800 gone, because I didn't think it through.
Right. One of the chapters I love, you talk about this idea of $1 million life lessons you learned while playing Monopoly with your 4-year-old, which is just amazing. Yeah. And one of the lessons you talked about, and you just alluded to it, is this idea of buying assets instead of luxuries. So talk a little bit more about that and this whole Monopoly thing. Yeah.
Well, when I was growing up, like I was a little fat, overweight kid. Okay. And, just ate away a lot of my problems and stuff. And sometimes I do
time out on that. So for everybody who's watching right now, before we came on air, so Chris just told you what he was like as a kid, but he's also just told me that he has spent COVID learning to do kickboxing. So you don't want, if anybody was picking on him when he was a kid, you don't want to cross Chris now.
Yeah. Now I know what to do.
Now he knows what to do. All
don't
right,
make me use it.
That's right. Keep going.
We don't, but like, but I would love video games, all that stuff. But I love Monopoly, right? And just playing it in, Boardwalk and Park Place and the idea. But I didn't know all these lessons of money now until like, I started reading business books. And so we're bringing out the board and playing with my daughter. And I'm just, we're buying houses. I'm looking at how much we're charging for rent versus what we paid for it and all this stuff. And the idea, like, look, you buy this for that, but now this property is making you money. And I explained to it, look, you paid for this property for this much. Her name's London. And now this will make you this much if you put a house on it or 2 houses. And just like the idea of like buying more, and all of a sudden you have this income coming in. And then, but when we would land on the luxury, and I never noticed it, I never saw that, just that diamond ring that's in between Boardwalk and Park Place. Like, we would land on that, and I get so frustrated in the game. Oh, I owe $75, and like, because you want to win the game, you want to buy more properties and stuff, right? Because that's how you win. But in life, we get like all stoked buying luxuries and things that don't make me any money, and we shy away from investing in properties because I don't want to clean a toilet or whatever. I get a call from a tenant or something like that, and all these supposed horror stories. Bad stories tend to travel faster than the new ones, or good ones, right? And so I'm just looking at this stuff. I'm like, wow, like in the game of Monopoly, we want to win, but why don't we take that same attitude to life and want to win with our finances, And, just the idea of, rolling the dice I talk about in the book where, you might land on a property and you might make money, or you might land on that, item where you owe money, but you roll the dice anyways and you take risk. And the idea that sometimes, life has beat different people up. I've definitely made a lot of mistakes from taking different risks and got hurt. But I realized if you're not willing to take risks, you're not willing to roll the dice and take a chance, you think you're, insulating yourself from risk, but you're also insulating yourself from reward. You're missing out on the possible potential, and in life, you got to take risks. Like we call that in the Bible, faith. Faith without works is dead. And sometimes you don't know that step, and obviously get wisdom, get knowledge, get everything you can, but make a decision, bro. Whoever's listening to this, like take action. Like don't do it unwisely. I don't want you to make stupid decisions or whatever, but you gotta move, God can steer a moving ship a lot easier than one that's just standing still. Right. So.
Absolutely. One of the things that, when I kind of look around me and read stories on finance right now, it seems like a lot of people are just kind of living month to month in their realities. And but I think moments like COVID, you can either kind of stand still like you described, or these are shifting moments in society. And there's an opportunity to be entrepreneurial in these kinds of seasons that we find ourselves in right now. And you talk about in the book, one of the ideas you talk about is how to make money while you sleep. And, I think that's music to a lot of people's ears, the idea of making money while you sleep. Yeah. So talk a little bit about that. What does that look like? How do we make that kind of money?
Well, I'll give a real manly example right now, because I think a lot of guys will relate to this. And this just happened to me the other day. It was a few months ago, it's about half a year ago. I don't know when. I got a flat tire, okay? And like I said, I didn't have a dad growing up, okay? So I know a lot about computers and fixing computers, but I could not do an oil change to save my life, let alone change a flat tire, which I had, right? So I'm stuck on the side of the road, and I call everyone. Nobody can help me answer the call. My wife didn't even pick up the phone. Not that she knows how to change tires. And so I pull up, I don't have it in front of me. I pull up my phone and I get on YouTube, how to change a tire. And all of a sudden there's this, manly guy showing me how to change a tire, like step by step for my truck. But what happened right before that YouTube video? An ad played on. And so if he's got his YouTube channel monetized, this elderly man, he got paid from that ad revenue from just sharing his knowledge about changing cars. But this is one thing a lot of us do. We devalue what we know. And a lot of people don't realize that the info business is like $1 billion business right now, especially with COVID, education, all that stuff. And I know every man, woman, whoever's listening to this has something of value where they could easily teach something, let alone put it up on YouTube or teach an online course, put it in an ebook, put it in whatever format, blog, and all of a sudden generating revenue from that specifically. And obviously we hear about YouTube all the time and YouTubers, but it's not just like these people are doing crazy cat videos and stuff. It's like education stuff that, guys know. And I'll even bring it to this podcast. Like maybe there's a podcast that someone wants to do and you're talking and sharing valuable information like we're doing right now. But okay, well, how do you monetize a podcast? Well, someone might say like, I don't have anything for sale. Well, there's this thing that's really awesome. I talk about a little bit in the book about like affiliate marketing, where you sign up for, whether it's to be an affiliate on Amazon or it could be a grocery company. And during every episode, you're like, hey, there's this thing we really, really like. Maybe, and for men specifically, it could be like, Dollar Shave Club or something like that. That's, for your audience. And you just recommend somebody else's product and use your link or your code. And when they sign up, you get paid a commission on that. And then you don't have to put any money in product or stock. You don't even, just something that's awesome that you can recommend to your audience. So I could go on all kinds of different ideas, but I wanted to kind of man it down there right now, So I hope that gives some guys some ideas.
That's good. Yeah. And I think, I would just encourage guys, read the book. It'll give you some other ideas that you can dive into on this. But there's a guy who contributes to our website. His name's Daniel M. He talks about the reality of the gig economy and how so many people have this reality where they've got their regular job, but they've got their kind of gig side job that they're doing,
side hustle or whatever.
And that's just part of our reality now. And so use the imagination God's given to you, use the entrepreneurial spirit. There are tons of tools out there that you can access. You just got to put a little bit of work into getting those tools up and running. But, there's lots of things you can do. One of the things that I found really interesting, you talked about the role of mentors in a financial plan. And I find a lot of people don't like to talk to other people about their money. It's like, it's one of those really money and sex to me seems to be those things that are like really private. I don't really want to talk to others about it. So for you personally, what role do mentors play in your own financial plan?
Yeah, really, really big. Again, not having a dad and just really wanting to seek out godly men that were, successful in business and their families, health, all that stuff, really attracted me. And the man that did the foreword to the book, Peter J. Daniels, he was one of my mentors. And it started out with, of course, church. And that's why I love the local church and God, because you get connected to things. My wife came home one day and her friends said, hey, you should go listen to this guy, Peter J. Daniels. And I was like, oh, okay. They recommended it. So I was like, okay, let's listen to this guy, whatever, let's go listen to his message. And right when he started speaking, like one of the things he said, he's like, man, go add up all your tools, all the things that you own, all the different stuff, and then subtract it from everything that you owe. And that's your net worth. And anyways, he just started going off and he said this thing about, you're going to trade your life for either a big dream, a small dream, or no dream, but it's still going to cost you the same, your life, And so it really challenged me to go for a big dream. Well, I'm listening to his stuff. I end up buying all his books, listened to the audios, I don't know how many times, bought his courses. I found out he was speaking here, and he's from Australia, speaking in, Windsor. So me and my buddy drove 4 hours to go see him speak. And I remember I asked him a question and he kind of actually told me off, which is kind of funny. And I don't know what it is, because not having that, I like kind of being told the truth, like the raw truth. Like I don't sugarcoat it. Like I need help. I need to know. And I asked him some questions. He's like, if you had your marketing right, you wouldn't be asking me that, you need to learn how to market, And anyways, somehow I stayed in contact somehow. And I bought another program and then I invested in some other thing. And anyways, he emailed me. Somehow I had the opportunity to fly all the way to Australia to be coached by him. And so, and this guy's like a billionaire. Okay. Like this guy worked with Norman Vincent Peale, Power of Positive Thinking, like W. Clement Stone, like some pretty, and he's I don't know how old he is now. He's in his 80s or something like that. And anyways, ended up having him write the foreword to my book. And I wrote the foreword to his book, which was really cool. Got to, not the foreword, I wrote a reference, but I just hope men are listening how sometimes it goes from online. Then I sought him out at a conference or a seminar, bought his program, and invested in that type of mentorship. There's other programs that I'm in where I'll get monthly coaching twice a month, and I'm part of a group. There's actually a guy downtown Toronto. His name's Evan Carmichael, who coaches with like YouTube and stuff. And so he's helping me blow some things up there. So like, even though like people might say, oh, Manafest, you're here, or whatever, you've done this or this success and whatnot. Like, I'm still seeking out men all the time, or women, to learn from, and just putting myself in front of it. Some stuff's more expensive than others. And, for those that, can't afford certain things, well, that's what this podcast's for, right? Like, there's so much free stuff as well. And if you want to go deeper, pay for it. But what I've realized is, don't just be a freebie seeker, because people that pay attention, like, get the book, but then, go deeper and surround yourself with godly men that are where you want to be, and learn from them and grow.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And I just love the picture you painted of the intentionality and the work it takes to find a mentor. That it's not like, a lot of times guy just lands in front of your doorstep and, hey, I'm going to be your mentor, right? So I think the big lesson for anybody who's listening today is, look, if you want to find a mentor, that's amazing, but that's only the first step. The next step is you got to put some work into identifying that person, pursuing relationship, and learning from them along the way. So we talked a little bit earlier about the importance of getting out of debt, and let's say somebody gets into the black. Is there a way that you can thrive when you're in the black, or does being in the black actually also create a whole other set of problems for people sometimes?
Well, what happens for some people is, once they've had success and they've like really hustled really hard right now, like even for some men listening, it's snowing right now and it's just snowstorm. So if people are listening to this later, but there's a lot of people that need driveways shoveled. There's a lot of people that need their car detailed. Like, there's work to be done out there, and you can make some money. And some of you right now, like, you'll be willing to put that hustle in right now, and you get from, in the red, in debt, to in the black. You're out of debt now. And sometimes all of a sudden we stop doing what got us there, and we take our foot off the gas, and we ease off. And then all of a sudden those bad habits start forming again. And we're like, oh, well, I'm here now. And the idea of like, being in the middle class and keeping up with the Joneses and certain things. And all of a sudden we're starting to do the things that got us into debt in the first place. And it's like, once you're in the black, I would encourage you to, keep having a dream, keep having a bigger goal, learn how to multiply your money, how to invest it. So eventually you can get your money, working for you. So you're not always, hustling, maybe you do hustle out and build a contact list of car detailing and stuff in your neighborhood, and you're the one doing it. But then you hire the kid down the street for cheaper, and he's going and doing all the car detailing. Well, you can be at home still dreaming up something else, creating another business, another opportunity. And, you've kind of cloned yourself in a way, but you're putting like a gap between you and that debt, because now you've got another income stream and something else coming. And I just encourage, like I said earlier, just having a dream, having a goal that's bigger, so you don't fall into that trap, and stop hanging around people that are broke. And I'm not saying like, cut off all your friends, but whoever you hang around with is going to influence you. And for some people, the crowd that you're hanging around with is making some really poor life decisions. Yeah. And if you don't want to end up that way, well, then you want to be careful who you're rubbing shoulders against.
Absolutely. That's great wisdom right there. I'm reading through Proverbs right now, and one of the things Proverbs talks about is, if you want to be wise, you got to hang out with the wise. Yeah. And you will become who you surround yourself with. And so that's good. We need to make sure we're surrounding ourselves with some wise people when it comes to money. Hey, we are out of time. I really appreciate all the things that we've been able to talk about today, and just your perspective and your wisdom on this whole conversation. I hope it's been helpful for our listeners. If people want to learn more about the book, what's the best place to go to order a copy of it?
Yeah, they can get it on Amazon, the audiobook or the ebook. If they want to get a physical copy, we set it up where they can get it free. They just have to cover shipping, though. To get it to Canada, I think it's like $17, something like that. Just go to manafest.com/from red to black, and they can do that as well. And they can get a copy there.
Great. The book's called From Red to Black by Chris Greenwood, otherwise known as Manafest. Chris, thanks so much for joining us today. Glad to have you on the podcast.
Thanks so much, man.
Thanks for listening to the Impactus podcast. To learn more about living a life of purpose and godly impact, check out impactus.org.